Pretty pissed.
Yeah, but it's okay though. Yeah, because one of the funny things that comes up is our conversations at lunch. Sometimes we miss some really good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of one of those conversations that we probably should, think about keeping.
Right.
Well, what I was sharing off mic was I was studying to be a history professor for a great deal of my life. It's something I felt I had some passion for, only to discover I really didn't in the end. But my thesis chair was this Hungarian American whose family died in a death camp under the Nazis. And he was a survivor of that. And it was just a fascinating deal. One of the topics that always came up in his classes, which I took all of them, was, why didn't people resist earlier on? I mean, Hitler was evil from the very beginning.
Yeah.
You don't really get to see it manifested. But you look back and things like Kristallnacht and other things that happened early on, there were clear indications. And so everybody acts like they were surprised later to find out he had death camps. But everybody knew about Dachau, which was not necessarily an extermination camp, but wasn't a pleasant place to live either. So there were plenty of precursors to that. But I think the equivalent to this is you look at now and some of the things that are going on, whatever side you're on, and you look and you think, why do people vote the way they vote?
Yeah.
And to me, it's much the same question as we have about them. But the answer is now, I don't know, it's necessarily about patterns and stuff, but you see overwhelmingly, part of it is they've heard something 3 times. But the other part of it is they're okay getting free crap. The whole communist, socialist, whatever is going on, whatever it's going to be called today.
Path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Well, the age groups are clearly defined, to your point. They're clearly young, like it, older don't.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of interesting because
they're the easy adopters.
Yeah. College.
But they all it's interesting. I know some real old hippie style Democrats,
Uh-huh.
and they love all that free crap too. None of them need it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they vote for it for other people, so other people can get all the free crap that their taxes are actually paying for.
Right.
But it's an interesting phenomenon. To me, the parallels between what you see in Weimar Germany during the interwar period between World War I and World War II, what goes on there economically, politically, and what we're seeing currently. Sadly, my professor has passed now because I'd love to get what his take is on the parallels. What am I missing in my analysis?
Yeah.
Because he lived in it.
Yeah.
And they killed Jews by the boatloads in Eastern Europe.
Right.
And I think, when we have political leaders that are calling for extermination of people that they don't like, it's really kind of...
Well, and they kind of started off in the vein of, well, we just can't trust these people. See, the narrative sounds familiar to me in the sense of, we just can't trust these people to run things. And that's kind of what we're starting to hear now in our society, I think, because you're hearing people come out and say,
well, why are you resisting the vaccine?
Exactly. The whole narrative of, why do you think the way you do? Why do you do the things you do? Why do you own the things you do?
Why do you cling to the beliefs you believe
in?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how he started out, in my opinion. If you go back and look in the the early 30s, that's where he started.
He wasn't a big fan of Christianity, too. He subjugates the Catholic Church
pretty
early
quick
on.
Yeah.
Wasn't he an occultist? Wasn't he kind of on that world of the...
I think he surrounded in people that were in the occult.
There were a lot of... He had a lot of freaks in his freak show.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of that contamination along the way. But we were... I'm sorry, this kind of free flows in some ways.
That's fine.
But we were talking about... There was a U.S. study that I think came out in 1943 where they analyzed Hitler psychologically. Mm-hmm. And it's not a very flattering evaluation. But one of the things they come up with is he had a Russian peasant that would crap for him.
Wait, so this was a study that was done
by OSS
in 1943.
In 1943, okay. It's published originally.
Okay, so he had a peasant that what?
A Russian peasant.
Yeah.
That crapped for him.
Okay.
God damn.
Mm-hmm.
And,
wow.
And of course they're putting in there because at the time there's nothing more scandalous.
Yeah.
Now I'm taking probiotics and I'm wondering was he really a pervert or did he have he had stomach problems because he was gassed in World War I.
Right.
So you don't know which way that is, but they were selling, the OSS and the U.S. government was selling a story
right
that they wanted you to know because who else other than a weirdo would have a Russian peasant.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the whole thing is whatever narrative you want to spin, you pay for information to validate it. To your point, if you get from 3 credible sources, what people perceive to be credible, which would be higher education. Well, it's
Yeah.
got to be true.
Yeah.
And how many times have they been wrong?
Right.
Well, I mean, they preach that to you. Follow the science.
Yeah,
I mean, how many
so-
times have we heard that?
And how many times have they been wrong?
So
Yeah.
there is a certain subset of people out there now that, and academics.
Mm-hmm.
So when you bring up your professor from, just give me what year was this?
This would have been 85
Okay,
about.
so you have people who are academics now. Either they're either going through their their higher education now, or they're already sort of they've already gone to the other side. Who will look back at a teacher from 85
Oh, yeah.
and go, well, those fuckers didn't know anything. If they go read this book,
Well, they didn't know what they didn't know. You're right.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but they're going, this book that was written in 2002 by blah, 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 whoever, says that, they dug out this other, they dug out this other information. So they had maybe hypothesis theories, but to your point, what you said earlier today is if you say it basically 3 times, that becomes sort of your new truth. So
Which
you
is funny
fucking
because you had the guy that lived it. I mean,
Yes, and
and he's now the idiot.
Yes, and that's the part.
Well,
that
you're hearing
floors me
this-
is when
yeah.
you have these conversations with
Exactly.
these academics.
Yeah.
Well,
is
listen to the
they don't
Cubans.
want you to push back against what they fucking
Yeah.
say, and I'm like, all I just heard is you just don't want to be wrong.
Right.
You
Exactly.
are, but
Yeah.
you don't want to be.
Well, the reason why you can't be wrong is because then you're subject to losing money
yes.
or popularity or your seat in a board. I mean, if you listen to the Cubans today,
Yeah.
that's a big thing. I mean, all the Cubans that have migrated to Florida
Yeah.
and the rest of the country are like, dude, we need to help those people down there because of what's going on.
Yeah.
all the people they want to be speaking,
Yeah.
speaking on behalf of the Cubans,
Yeah.
they're not. Like,
Right.
you get these people going, hey,
Well, Sean Penn's a fan.
AOC, how come you're not
Yeah.
speaking about this?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, really, the low-hanging fruit would be
Yeah.
you would get her, and she's not saying a fucking word.
Right.
Well, the fascinating thing to me about the Cuba is you have real political refugees at this point.
Oh, yeah.
People that really need asylum. Cubans, clearly. I mean, you can see what's going on down there. If anything ever fit the narrative for political asylum, it's what's going on in Cuba.
Right.
And our president stood up there and said, don't come. We don't want you.
Yeah.
For very clear reasons. I mean, we
Yeah.
know why that he doesn't
Yeah, 'cause he
want
doesn't-
us.
Well, they're anti-communist.
Exactly.
And they're
Yeah.
blaming the only problems that they have right now stem from just recent government missteps with money. And I'm like, motherfucker, this shit's been going on for like
Long
60
time.
plus years.
Long
Yeah.
time.
It didn't just
I
happen.
mean, we all know about the Cuban flotillas in the early
Yeah,
80s,
yeah.
70s,
Oh, yeah.
late 70s, early 80s. We all saw that. But it's funny that they turn around and look at Mexico and Guatemala and all the other South American states and say, come on, this is all political asylum. Why doesn't somebody on any side of the aisle stand up and say, wait a minute, you like these brown people but not these brown people?
Right.
So it's not a racist thing, because that's how they like to couch this.
Sure.
Is this is some racist activity that's going on in one party? You know, one party's racist here. That's why we don't want South Americans in here.
Right.
When you've got a clear example of hypocrisy, but nobody takes the time to point that out. I don't understand.
So I will go so far as lately the new thing with trying to bring Afghan interpreters that were
Yeah.
Oh,
over
yeah.
here.
That's a great
And
parallel.
you've got this pushback where you have you've got certain legislators that aren't signing off on it. Now we don't have visibility on why did you say fucking no.
yeah.
But now I can say from my end on the veteran community, I've actually seen some guys that are like, don't bring these people over here. Let them make them stay and fight in their own freaking country. And I'm like,
But with the drawdown, you're starting to see some of the results of that.
Yeah,
now.
I've already seen
And
that.
not going
it-
so
it
well.
was easily predictable.
The special
They
operations
were
were.
going to kill everybody.
I watched
Yeah.
the video. Fucking
Yeah.
watched a murder right
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and you're telling me that you don't want to take care of these freaking interpreters that took care of us
Yeah.
when we were fucking there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met 4 or 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So hell yeah, they want to come here.
So
they
it's
don't want to get murdered too.
Yeah.
yeah,
They
a
just-
lot of the inner workings of what he was speaking about earlier on is exactly what you're saying. All those backstories that we're talking about are literally what they roll up into that big movement. I mean, when you look at all the countries around Nazi Germany at that time, on how they were politically influential in the submission of a lot of those countries over there. I mean, a lot of those people are not really fighters.
Yeah, I mean, they're not
just
cut out for it.
They're not
Yeah.
cut out for it. They have the capability, obviously, because if you're a human, you can be driven to a point of
Yeah.
basal human behavior.
Yeah.
But when you look at, well, I don't want to lose this, and I can make this work as long as I get to keep my house or I get to keep my job.
Well, you also don't believe that it's going to go to the next level.
Right. And that's what they use on you.
Yeah, they've made me stop working.
Yeah, it's
but
part-
they're not going to make me go to a concentration camp.
Yeah, they're going to let me stay in my house.
And then they take you to the concentration camp. Well, at least it's not a death camp.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then they take you to the shower.
Yeah.
And you don't have any other worries left.
Yeah.
Right. And
you don't need a towel. You don't need a towel.
Trust us.
We all air dry here.
Matter of fact, leave all your clothes ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing how naive the masses are. And that suspension of reality, we just haven't changed. We haven't progressed. Well, some of us haven't progressed. And, I'd be interested in looking at over a period of time on human progression in the sense of, have we always been these type of followers? I mean, because if you go back to Egyptian days and you look at the original slave days,
Yep.
the original days of slavery were an elitist group of royals
Yeah.
lorded over, and it's every society,
I-
China, Japan,
Without
Middle East.
assigning, I mean, it's the strong governing the weak.
Right.
So, and then at some point you have this hierarchy that, okay, now I'm going to be the guy that walks around with a crown on
then
your
you
head.
end up in a case where that whole deal flips on its head.
There you go.
Because you have the power of mass numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But individual of the weakness of the individual
Yeah.
slave in the deal. But their overall numbers, when you have a successful slave revolt, which I think is what brings down Rome, or at least the Western Roman Empire, is the same kind of deal where they realize that at some point the slaves realize their ability, that their mass numbers will take out their overlord.
Isn't this what Jules said in Pulp Fiction to
Yeah, exactly. What's
To-
really
to
funny,
Ringo?
Yeah, what's really funny about this is when you look at decadence gets them killed.
Yeah.
So and it's usually perversity.
Yeah.
It's gluttony, greed, and perversity.
Rome's the prime example.
Exactly.
Of
Well, if you look at Epstein and the ring he
Yeah.
was involved in, seriously, I mean, those people. So it's really funny how how these elites differentiate themselves from the commoner, in the sense of because they have the means that gives them the ability to do the things.
And maybe the right.
Exactly.
in their mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, because remember at one time royals were only marrying royals. They were like, well, and that when you start getting relatives with flippers and shit, that doesn't work so well. Yeah.
Is there a downside to this?
Yeah, exactly.
You can bleed a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you look at it, so they keep saying that America is 250 years and it's going to expire.
Yeah.
See, I disagree with that. I disagree. Maybe as you know it or used to know it,
Yeah.
but it's either going to cross this path of we're either going to succumb. I don't really see that. I see it because it's being presented to you that you are, but I got a feeling there's enough people that are going to say, nah, I kind of like...
I don't know. I think you've read a generation of people that are willing to allow that to happen.
Right.
Well, they control the major streams of the mechanism of information.
Absolutely.
And they're already setting the stage that any succession is really the Civil War all over again. We are the modern day slave owners if you're a successionist.
So what I think is really funny about that, though, is when you look at this January 6th bullshit thing that went on, when you start tearing that apart and you start doing the facial recognition,
Yeah.
a lot of those dudes were Antifa.
Yeah.
And the FBI is not investigating that. So to your point, when you hold the cards and you hold the key to the jail,
Well, I mean, go to Gretchen.
Yeah.
Go to the Gretchen. What's her
Whitmer.
name? Yeah, Whitmer.
yeah,
And the fake kidnapping.
Yeah.
The whole thing was propagated by the FBI. They've already proven that. They've got documents. This is not conspiracy.
And this
is
isn't
provable
a recent
fact.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened in Waco, as despicable as the folks, or the leader that lived
Yeah.
there was, not a guy I'd want as my neighbor.
Right.
I mean, the ATF set that up as somebody they could easily beat.
Yeah.
And then were surprised.
Yeah.
And misplayed it. Ruby Ridge, again, another guy I wouldn't necessarily want as my neighbor. The FBI and the ATF set that up as a situation that could control, drive the narrative
Yeah.
the way they want, and kill off some not particularly desirable folks. And
All for a show. To say,
for a show.
look at the Bundy the Bundy Ranch.
Clive
standoff.
Bundy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at that, I mean, and so when you go to the backstory of every one of those, you start finding out why they did that.
Yeah.
You start looking at the governmental reason for that. It's funny because the Texas Rangers and the FBI, that's where they were not friends.
Yeah.
Party
Texas Rangers hate the FBI, and the FBI hates the Texas Rangers because Texas Rangers claim jurisdiction.
Yeah.
FBI said, "Fuck you, we're going to do this."
Yeah.
And the Rangers were like, well, we're just going to get him when he comes out
Yeah.
because he's got to come out.
Well, that sheriff told him that.
Exactly.
And he's like, he comes to the diner every Saturday. Just
Yeah.
hang tight.
He was saying that at the time. I
Yeah.
remember him talking on the
Yeah.
television.
Yeah.
I can pick him up any day if they'd leave him alone.
So that was Big Sis Jan Reno, and
Yeah.
and it was also Clinton.
Yeah.
And so when you looked at how they forced that, and what I think is really interesting about it is we're prosecuting cops now, but they didn't prosecute anybody for shooting Finnegan.
No.
They murdered Finnegan, the whole Bundy thing.
Yeah.
When he was in that car.
Yeah.
They set up for him. They got him out of the vehicle and they
'cause
murdered
that
him.
was an ambush.
Yeah, that was an ambush on the side of the road. They
Yeah.
killed him. Nothing happened to that.
Yeah.
The guy at Ruby Ridge, he was murdered.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
He
his
was-
wife. It was his
his-
wife.
Yeah,
that
his-
was
his
murdered.
wife, his baby, and his
Yeah.
wife. Yeah, his son and his pregnant wife were murdered.
Right.
So you have that, and then an entire group of, and we talk about protecting the children. They killed those children
Yeah.
by taking the actions they took.
Yeah.
And so you look at where they talk out of one side, and then they completely act on another side.
Yeah.
It's like, look over here while we do this, and it's really sad. And I gotta think that we can relate every one of those to the Third Reich. We can relate every one of those stories to an SS activity. We can relate it to even humans creating their own committee turning on humans,
Yeah.
whether just because they feel like we're serving a greater good, even misguided or not. So, I mean, it's kind of the human condition at this
It is.
point.
It's a pattern. I mean, we can look at it all throughout history and follow this pattern. It's a repeating pattern that it's very trackable. So
Yeah, I get it.
Well, thanks for the story time, Stan.
It kind of went sideways on me, but that's my fault. 'Cause I
Yeah,
got sidetracked.
always goes that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing you got to learn about this podcast group. It always goes that way.